This time we'll do a tutorial that's been done hundreds of times. We will take a character and skin it from start to finish. Unlike other ngSkinTools tutorials I've done in the past, I will not be focusing on one specific feature. Instead, I'll try to show the whole workflow for one specific character. A lot of times in rigging tutorials, I feel like skinning is one of the weakest links, with lots of fiddling around and uncertainty, and I think this gives skinning a bad reputation. I want to show that skinning, if approached methodically, can actually be very straightforward, quick, and even enjoyable. We will start at a point where the character rig is already ready for skinning. I found this very nice model on CG Trader and built the rig with mGear. And I will not be covering the rigging bit. If you're interested, check mGear tutorials for that. They're excellent. And I will only focus on getting a nice deformation on the skin itself. So, how do you start? When you first initialize skinning layers, you get this default layer that contains weights of all influences in the rig. And what we'll do is we will get rid of it all. The plan is that for the first layer, we will only skin torso and then layer other parts on top. So we name the layer torso, select all the spine joints, and then click Assign from closest joint. And now each vertex is skinned exclusively to a joint that is closest to it. To tweak this, I will use Replace Brush with intensity of 1. And whenever I want to switch current influence, I will just hold S key and sample influence on the screen. To replace weights on the hand, I use Screen Mode Brush. Use it when you want the brush to apply to backside vertices as well. Let's enable mirroring as well. In the Effects tab, enable mirroring effect, and also enable preview of mirrored weights in display settings. And now to continue with this, we need to animate some poses. For this, I select all controls. And on the timeline, every 10 frames, I hit S key to keyframe all of them. Then, every second keyframe, I make a pose. This gives me an animation where a character goes to a pose and back to bind pose. Now let's smooth it up a bit. You can notice that as I'm smoothing, I'm using the timeline to see how weighting looks in different poses. In this phase, pick a pretty strong smooth brush, but don't overdo it. Also, don't be afraid to use undo and just judge visually where tweaks are needed. For now, let's consider this is good enough. With layers, we can always go back and tweak it later. Okay, let's do shoulders next. For that, I'll create a new layer, and then it's more or less the same. Block initial weights, enable mirroring, animate poses, and start smoothing. For this area with the necklace, I use volume smoothing a lot to make sure that body and necklace weights align. Here I use scale brush with the soft shape to reduce shoulder influence on the ribcage. With all the smoothing going on, arm area lost some weight, so I added back. Don't quite like how polygons in the middle stretch too much, so reducing weight here as well. Here body geometry intersects with the shirt, but again, volume smooth and it's fixed. There's too much deformation near the neck, need to tone down a bit, so again using scale to reduce weight and then smoothing to polish. Same with the necklace, need to deform much less near the middle. Here I wanted to fix the armpit, but keep shirt intact. So for that I unselected shirt geometry, and now smoothing the armpit sticks vertices to the shirt nicely. Some final tweaks. Looking good so far. So, shoulders are done. Let's do the arm now. Upper arm has 3 twist joints, so I'm blocking them out in a separate layer. Notice how I fill the whole layer with weight, not just on the forearm. Instead, we'll use layer mask to define which areas of the layer should be used. For now, just some quick initial weights to start posing. When you're posing, pay attention at the deformation with raw weights. It should look relatively close to your expected final result. If it looks way off, there might be some underlying issues with the rig itself. Smoothing mask here. So mask is not an actual influence in the skin cluster. Instead, it will define the transparency of the layer. Here I'm using the mask to define the separation of arm and the rest of the body. I want to hide the shirt temporarily, so I select body vertices and use hide unselected vertices in the display. And here I just proceed polishing the mask further, mostly just using smooth and making sure that I check changes in all poses. Quite unhappy with the volume loss on the bicep. Trying to add some volume by increasing weights on the middle twist joint. Now moving on to forearm. Everything's very similar to what we did with the upper arm. New layer, 3 twist joints, and a mask. So here you can see a bad example of test animation. See how arm is bending and being lowered at the same time? Working on the bend then becomes harder when it's moving around, so keep this in mind when planning your test poses. And now fixing the forearm twist. Added additional poses and now working to make the bend look nicer in extremes. Similar to bicep, just changing the distribution between twist joints, experimenting, and just judging visually. Sometimes I would see that people would take out their calculators and do the math how much weight should be assigned to twist joints, but as you can see, it's just a pretty straightforward creative process. I'm not quite sure what happened to the bicep. I might have misused the rig and bent the elbow into the wrong direction, and then added a bunch of unneeded tweaks in the upper arm twist to make the pose look good. But oh well, can always go back and refine it later. Adding more weight to first twist here. I want less twisting near the elbow. Noticed a small bug. I toggle layer visibility on and off to figure out which layer has it, and find out that I had some mask in the wrong place. Fixed. And now I take a step back and play around a bit with poses to see if there are things that need attention. And it's also a time to admire the work that you've done so far, and the break that you deserve. For the hand, the palm has 4 joints, so I roughly block them out and then spend some time to get the mask right. Here I make the pose very extreme. This helps to see skinning errors better. And when smoothing, you can also see distribution between joints easier. And we will do fingers separately. For now, I only care about the palm area. I'm not quite happy with this bump here. Having a second look, I'd say I'd need to adjust the joint pivot to get a better deformation. But I'm lazy, so let's call this left as an exercise for the reader. I play around with some more weird poses, just trying to feel if deformation looks right. And here I see a small thing to fix. These verts should be more stationary. I do thumb on a separate layer because it has such a big connection surface with the palm, and I want to address it separately. Otherwise, the workflow is identical to the other parts. Slightly too much volume loss here. I try to fix it with some sharper weights. And a quick recheck. Need to see how palm and thumb interact. Let's get to fingers. Nothing new here. I select all finger joints, assign each vertex to a closest joint, and add a mask to separate fingers from the palm. Then we need a test animation. Sometimes people refer to it as calysthenics, if you like fancy names. I gently flood some smoothing on the default weights, but I don't think this was a good idea. It would only work if you had pretty dense geometry, but in here I risk losing too much volume on fingers this way. Instead, to keep finger volume better, I smooth only the middle loops. You can also see that I use sharpen brush. Think of it as an opposite of smooth brush. A small intermediate review, and then on to refining the mask. Few final checks and we're done with the fingers. Proceeding to head now. The neck and head connection is a bit challenging here, but otherwise, same old approach. Remember when I said that if you see obvious issues in the blocking phase, you should fix the rig first? Well, I don't take my own advice here, even though I should. Instead, I just add more smoothing. Don't do this at home. Actually, do this at home and don't do this in production. Here is a very important bit. I want the necklace to move with the neck, but I want to leave the neck as it is. So I select just necklace vertices and volume smooth them. Nothing new to say for the legs, so let's just blast in super speed through it all. A bit of a Van Damme moment, so time for a joke. Two guys meet at the bar, and the first one says, Bond, James Bond. And the other one goes, Damn, Van Damme, Claude Van Damme, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Was that weird? Never mind, let's just finish up the other half of the leg. Shaping the foot here, it kind of became too rubbery. I want to bring back some rigidity. For that I use soft-shaped add brush and smoothing as needed. And as always, just trying some weird poses to see if anything needs attention. And we're done. Nah, just kidding. It is now time to start playing with the rig and finding out the more subtle issues. As you put yourself in animator's shoes or give it to your animator, there will obviously be areas that don't look very good and will need fixing. But video is about to end, so maybe next time? I don't know. Thanks for watching.